So welcome, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends, to our side event to the UN Commission on the Status of Women, which is meeting in its annual session across the street. And this event is entitled Standing with Iranian Women. Our goal is to show solidarity and take action in support of the brave, courageous, suffering women in Iran, all the people of Iran. And I want to thank members of the diplomatic corps who are with us here today. I want to recognize in particular permanent representatives and other diplomats from Canada, the European Union, Sweden, Spain, Israel, Guatemala, Macedonia, Montenegro, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Netherlands, the European Council, Denmark, Portugal, and Liechtenstein. Really appreciate your presence at this very important and timely event. As you know, as we speak in Iran, hundreds and hundreds of little girls, and I'm sure you'll hear more about it today, are getting poisoned, apparently as punishment for their brave stand for their human rights and participation in the women, life, freedom movement and protests. Today's event is co-sponsored by UN Watch, the organization that I direct based in Geneva, Switzerland, and the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights. And we'll hear later on from Brandon Silver, who's representing them and works with their chair, Professor Irwin Cotler, Canada's former Minister of Justice, who couldn't be with us here today. And we want to, at the time of the meeting of the Commission on the Status of Women, which meets once a year, it is important that there be at least one event that takes note and that celebrates the fact that the Islamic Republic of Iran became the first country in the history of that body, which dates back to the 1940s, so dating back 7 decades, the first country in the history of the United Nations to be expelled from that body. There actually was no procedure. Unlike at the Human Rights Council, where I'm based in Geneva, there is a stated procedure on how you remove a country. With Iran, there was no procedure, so this was uncharted territory, and I want to congratulate, in particular, the United States, which led the resolution to make it happen, and all of the countries and parliaments, including in Canada and the Netherlands and France and elsewhere, who supported this action. And of course, UN Watch was part of the campaign for the past couple of years. And I want to acknowledge also the role of Iranian human rights activists like Nazanin Afshinjam from Canada and Gisu Nia, the human rights lawyer, and her friends who did very important lobbying on this matter. I would like to read a statement from the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Shirin Ebadi, who couldn't be with us here today but sent a message, and I'd like to read that for you. So this is from Shirin Ebadi. Finally, the world heard the voices of Iranian women, and that thanks to Iran's feminist revolution with the slogan of Women, Life, Freedom, Iran is the country that has passed the most discriminatory laws against women since 1979. During the past 43 years, many women have been killed, imprisoned, or forced to leave Iran, and all they are doing is opposing the unequal situation. In such circumstances, Iran's membership in the Commission on the Status of Women was a mockery of the United Nations and all international laws. Fortunately, the world heard the voice of the Iranian people and expelled Iran from this commission. I'm grateful to all the governments that voted to expel the Islamic Republic of Iran and stand along with the Iranian protesters. You are standing on the right side of history. End of statement from Nobel Peace Prize laureate Shirin Ebadi. Before we move on to our program, and we're going to have greetings from the Canadian ambassador, we're going to hear from Golia Mary, who flew in just moments ago from Los Angeles to be with us, and with our keynote speaker, Masih Alinejad. I'll just say just 2 words about what's happening at the United Nations from where I see it. We've had important action that we haven't had before for supporting the women in Iran. We had an emergency session of the Human Rights Council, finally. It's something we called for 13 years ago with 50 Iranian human rights activists, but finally it was held in November, the first emergency special session of the Human Rights Council on Iran. They created a commission of inquiry, a fact-finding mission, which is beginning now to take submissions. And we've had calls in recent days that they take up the issue of the poisoning and other important things that are happening in Iran. So that was an important development, and I want to thank Germany for taking the lead and their foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, flying into Geneva and making that happen and got an important vote. The next month in December, we had the vote that we've been talking about here, the meeting of the Economic and Social Council for the first time ever, to remove a country, Iran, from the UN Commission on the Status of Women. So those were important actions. We also had, of course, the General Assembly, a strong resolution on Iran, human rights in Iran. And in Geneva, as we speak, the Human Rights Council is in session and will be debating a resolution on human rights in Iran, which I believe will be the strongest it has ever passed. It may not be as strong as we would like it, but the strongest that it has ever passed. And part of this will be thanks to the new report from the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Iran. And I'm going to just mention a few of the headers. It's just been published. He speaks of the use of unlawful, lethal force against protesters, the killing of children, the overrepresentation of ethnic and religious minorities in these killings, violence and killings during mourning ceremonies. People go to mourn the dead and then they get killed and shot and arrested there. Injuries of protesters and denial of medical care, mass arrests of peaceful protesters, arrest and detention of children and students, torture, sexual abuse. The list goes on and on. I'm just going to read the conclusion of the Special Rapporteur. Since the start of the protests, the highest levels of the state in Iran have instigated violence, instructed the security forces to confront the enemies. In line with these martial instructions, Iranian security forces, in what appears to be a policy followed in all regions of the country, particularly in Kurdish and Baluchi regions, have killed hundreds of protesters, including children. These killings amount to arbitrary deprivation of life in violation of Article 6 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, to which the Islamic Republic of Iran is a state party. So it's a very powerful report that's just been submitted to the Human Rights Council, and I hope that by the end of this month, early April, they will adopt a strong resolution on human rights in Iran. It's not enough for the people of Iran, but it's the beginning. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I would like to begin the program by just saying a word about our next speaker. Ambassador Bob Rae is the permanent representative of Canada. He has proven since his appointment here in New York to be an eloquent and outspoken voice for human rights around the world. I grew up in Canada watching him on television. He was in Parliament at the time, and then for many years was leader of the province of Ontario, and then the interim leader of the federal Liberal Party. So I grew up watching him on TV and saying, I'd like to be like that guy, that person. And now when I'm at the United Nations and I see him speaking, and he's one of the ambassadors who apparently has the trust of his government that he can speak extemporaneously, and he does so so powerfully. Many of those who watched the debate in December know that Russia said, you can't do this. You can't remove a country. There's no procedure for it. And Ambassador Rae took the floor and responded, and he said, can it really be that a country that's a member of this Commission on the Status of Women, that there's nothing that it can do against women that can have any consequences that affect its membership? Because that was the argument being made. If a country is a member of this body, there's no procedure, there's nothing you can do. And he powerfully asked that question, and indeed the vote was a very resounding majority to move forward, despite there not being a stated procedure, and to expel Iran. So many Iranians and others who were watching that were very inspired by Ambassador Rae's remarks. So it's an honor for him to be here with us today and to invite him to deliver greetings. Thank you.